Yeah, I think we're all here that are going to be here, so I think we can probably call the meeting to order. And note attendance. We have a consent agenda for tonight. The employment of a handful of teachers. Any discussion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we have one discussion item tonight, which is committee membership. And we referenced policy BCE and BCF. They were also available on Board Book, and you have copies in front of you. And Janet, I think you were going to also maybe bring some information on this as well, or was it just?
I did some digging.
Okay.
I couldn't find anything else, and of course, I would be less versed in our policies than you all would, but I didn't find anything else in our policies about this. And I went to OSBA, and the only one they really speak to is Budget Committee.
Right.
And they speak to a 3-year term, and I'm not familiar if that's our.
It is,
We're a
yeah.
3-year term as well. And then in terms of our other two, at least as far as I know, facilities, long-term facilities, and strategic planning. And I'm not aware if there are any others.
We've had one for boundary discussions in the
okay.
past. So if we need to convene a task force to discuss possible boundary changes, I'm trying to think if there's others. You guys are newer, so I
I'm
don't.
looking online, we usually post them on our website.
Okay.
And then whether those are distinct from task forces, if we've had task forces in the past.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe that's gray in my mind, the distinction between a committee and a task force. I think ostensibly they're serving a very similar role when they're convened, but
Oh, I've been a part of the task force before, and it was superintendent appointed. It wasn't a board appointed.
Okay.
maybe that's the
Okay.
distinction,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
The only, since I've been on, I think the only things we've had are the one that we just did, the long-term
Strategic.
facilities.
Oh,
No, strategic plan was not a board, that was not a board committee.
that was not a board committee.
Right. It's budget,
Yes.
long range
Those
facility.
are the two that I know.
Those are the only two.
Okay.
I mean, would a safe way to distinguish it, say it's a separate committee with its own elected chairman? You know, budget, long
Yeah, right.
range, you know, is that how those?
With both board and non-board
Right.
representation.
Right, and then
Equal
they have their own
representation.
chair and they convene their own meeting and do
Right,
their own thing.
right.
So how is strategic planning how are those individuals appointed?
I
By
think
the
that was
chair?
superintendent.
That was superintendent.
Superintendent again?
I think it
Okay.
was. I'd kind of forgotten that, but I think you're
That
right.
might not
Okay.
be, yeah, I don't.
It was happening, I don't even know, that might have already been appointed when I started, or it was close to being.
Okay.
That would make sense.
We nominated,
Right, right.
Okay.
just
Right.
informally. We informally
just
gave names for
Recommendations,
that,
okay.
yeah.
That's right, I kind of forgot about that.
And I know all the people that I nominated were named to that committee.
Okay,
So there was the strategic visioning, as you mentioned, and
Right.
the one we both sat in on when we looked at the PSU demographic study.
Mhm.
That was also superintendent,
okay,
when we were looking at the enrollment figures.
right.
Okay. So then the only ones I imagine that the board then would have sort of jurisdiction over would be facilities and budget. And
Sounds like it.
Anything the board wants.
Well, yeah, we could,
Right, we could create new ones, but
Yes.
as they currently stand, I
Yes,
guess.
that's the traditional.
Right. And then the board chair appoints those individuals with, again, generally with recommendation from, or nominations from board members.
we
That-
voted on budget committee members now.
Oh, that's right.
In
They're interviewed and selected.
a meeting.
Well, they were last time.
Okay.
One thing that I looked at just now, because it just came to me. I read these two policies, and then I remembered that the board chair policy BCB talks about the chair appointing committee members, but that's not the sense I got from these two policies that we have in front of us tonight. And I only read it once, so forgive me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was just
But-
double checking it too.
Right.
Yeah, here it just says, all appointments of citizens to advisory committees for the board shall be made by the board. But it doesn't say anything specifically.
Yeah,
Right.
but it
About
does
the
say
process.
board chair underneath the,
In BCB.
in BCB, it says board
Okay.
chair. So that's a little bit of a nuance there, and honestly, I don't know, until we get really better at parliamentary procedure, I suppose, or processes, I think that appointing committee members in a meeting might be troublesome. I mean, I think we really need to be clear on process if we were going to do that collectively. I think having the board chair do it is a little bit cleaner because it's, you know, one person doing it, but if there's a bunch of discussion, that could last all night. And so that's a concern that I have.
Probably one of the most flexible ways to approach committee assignments is to leave it in the hands of the superintendent. And that way you can say, hey, I know this person, can you give them a call and just touch base and see if they'd be a good fit? And that's and I will frequently, when I'm serving or forming a committee of some sort or a task force, to look into anything that might be controversial. Think boundaries, for example, or anything that may reasonably end up coming to a board meeting for a decision. I am definitely going to call all of you and say, okay, here's what I'm doing, send me some names, and then I'll just kind of curate from those lists. And that's probably the best flexibility. And then if somebody isn't a good fit, I'll say, you know what, that person might not be a good fit on this one, but I'll get them involved somewhere else. So that's a good way to go.
And that's essentially what the long-term facilities task force, or not task force, committee, that's how that went.
Well, that same ambiguity is in BCE when it says, it's talking about board committees, and it says that in the last paragraph, a board committee may appoint advisory members from the staff, student body, or community with the approval of the board. But when they say board committee, again, it's unclear. Is it the chair of that board? What is the process? Do they
Right.
board members get to vote? So it seems like there needs to be a little bit of, when we revisit these at some point, that there needs to be a little bit more clarity there about how that process works. Because I think the concern has been that the process, if it is done by one person and not in a public forum, while I totally appreciate what you're saying, Jennifer, about that getting sticky, that it's not transparent. And that in the past, the same group of people, to a certain extent, have been serving on all of those committees. And that we aren't doing a good job of broadening our representation in the community. It has nothing to do with those individuals per se. It's just that we haven't done a particularly good job of reaching out to try to recruit new people who've been traditionally underrepresented on those committees. And so I don't know if that's a policy issue of whether we need to rewrite something or if we just need to have some sort of a verbalized recommitting to that as something that we want to prioritize. But that's the danger with leaving it in the hands of any single individual, is you get busy and a lot of times you just sort of go to your pool, your bucket of names that you work from, rather than saying, okay, well, I'm gonna have to take some time, we need to do a process, we need to reach out, we need to go and find people. I think when people see the same people all the time, they exclude themselves and they go, oh, I don't know that I could do that, I don't know that wow, those people really know what they're doing, they're experts now, and what could I contribute? And I think we really want to encourage people to step up and say, you have a lot to contribute, and we need to hear your voice.
I think there's merit to that. My experience, I have served on, I guess they'd be task forces, I think. I have served on one of the boundary ones years ago. I've served on a long-range planning committee from, I don't even know, 15 years ago maybe. And I do see a lot of the same people, and I wonder how much of that is that those are the people. It's sort of like when I chaired the PTT, it was the same 10 people that did everything. Well, is it that symptom, right, where it's the
80-20
same
rule.
people
It's
that
both
are,
of those things.
that are
It really
always
is.
willing
It really is.
to do stuff, or is it just that we, as a collective group, might just feel comfortable picking people we're familiar with, right? I mean, maybe it is some and some.
I think it is.
So I guess,
Can I mention something, Jonathan?
Yeah,
And I would agree with Janet. There has been some people on the committees that are on different committees, but for the most part, it has been a lot of different representations that have been on these committees. I have never in 10 years seen the same people on all committees. You know what I mean? All the same people.
I think you're right. I don't think it's very common at all that people are on
No.
even multiple. And if they are, usually it's like me, it was one 15 years ago, one 7 years, there might have been 5 or 6 years between them, right? And then I was on something again.
And I think in the past, a lot of it may have been, it was hard to get people to come to the committees. I think they had a hard, it wasn't too many years ago that getting people to serve on the budget committee was, you had to beat the bushes to get someone to show up. So this is kind of a new phenomenon. You saw the same people because
As I said, the last,
they were the only folks who volunteered.
yeah, the last two cycles or years for budget committee considerations, there's been more people that have applied for that
Right.
than I've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's and I know on this latest long range group, I know there was a lot of new people. I know that the topic came up, and I remember that I asked Andy, and I think over half of them are new people. I think at least well over half. I think.
Well, I think that in terms of wrapping, well, I don't know. To me, I think what Janet is saying makes sense, that before this process happens, that it's good to, and we did this with budget committee, remember, we took the time to say, this is what we're looking for, right? Because
Right.
the last time we didn't do that great of a job of expressing ourselves. But expressing ourselves and having that discussion, and I know that, that's something that I did express in the public meeting, that people were concerned that there wasn't equal gender representation on the long-range facilities committee, and that if we state that as a value, if we agree that that's a value, and then hand it over to the superintendent, and the superintendent's having a hard time finding, because apparently that was part of the problem, is but then let's beat the bush again, and so maybe a little feedback instead of just presenting it all at once and then figuring out that there's an issue,
Right.
and then it's like, well, we're supposed to vote on it tonight, so yeah.
And that speaks to just being mindful of it and giving ourselves more lead time, so that we can kind of do a little bit of that feedback, instead of going, well, this is what we've got, and clock's ticking, and we'll figure it out next time.
I would agree with Janet. I think it's good and healthy for us to bring it out in the open, discuss it. And I think we all have to make an effort as board members to find people, too, out of our comfort zone, that are willing to serve and share their passion. I've had a couple names already. People have walked up and said, would you consider? And I said, hey, I have your name, and when that opportunity comes up, you'll know about it, And we did that for the screening committee as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably would have liked to have, and there'll probably be other screening committees and task forces. And I'd like to know how we gather those names and how they're selected and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's important that we do have the transparency and look for fresh new lens and people that want to share their passion.
I'd like to invite you, when you have people approaching you that would like to get involved in something, even if they're not even sure what they want to get involved in, tell them to call Debbie and get on my calendar, come in and meet with me, so I can kind of hear what they're interested in, and then I can start to look for ways to get them involved, and I can sort of orchestrate getting them involved where they'll feel like they're having a meaningful contribution, and then they can fit in. I really appreciate that.
And I could, if you don't mind if I speak on the facilities task force, I was the one that did all the calling, so I had a pretty lengthy list of I would say 3-ish people per group, per school or boundary, and I didn't get yeses all the time.
Right.
What's the commitment? I said it's going to be at least one meeting per month, and that knocked a lot of people
Sure.
out right there. So that was a big commitment. A lot of these people maybe are business owners, or they can't just take off. So I didn't always get a yes. I got a lot of no's. So and I had plenty of names to keep going. So and then trying to keep it balanced. You talked about gender and where they lived, and it was a puzzle to put it all together. So,
think part of it is probably that I don't think as board members, we see a lot of that. We didn't hear a lot of that. We didn't know about a lot of that. To be honest, it was a magic list that appeared for a vote. And,
Yeah.
and I think simply just talking about it may actually alleviate some of the angst that's being felt on this topic to
I
begin with.
totally agree.
Because I think all of the board members supplied names, principals supplied names, trying to think where else they kind of came from. And I think Andy always kind of just had like a running list of people that were interested, and that's kind of
Right.
how that came together.
Right.
So,
And on the long-range facilities, my intention is to keep expanding that. It'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, especially if we start working towards any sort of initiative that might even start to hint at a bond campaign in the future.
Right.
We'll just be building that, and that snowball will just go.
Excellent.
So I wanna circle back around. There were a couple of things that were brought up on this. One had to do with possible, I don't know if it was ambiguity, but vagueness in the language of the policies. The other one had to do with who is appointing. I think the policies are mostly clear, minus perhaps the process, whether it be a chair appointment or board vote, right? We adopted for the budget committee a board vote last year, and well, there was feedback provided afterwards. It was, I thought, fairly effective. I mean, it did what it was intended to do.
Yeah, and it was transparent
And it
in
was
the sense
transparent,
that the process was pretty clear. However, we just needed to talk about our values more and why we were voting for certain people more. And I think that
Right.
Yeah.
that helps alleviate the questions
Right.
and the idea that things are happening behind closed doors and
Right.
and all of that. So I agree with the idea of the more we talk about it, the better. Because I would have liked more information too about well how is this gonna happen, and you just giving us a short summary is helpful.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, that's great.
let's talk about it more and ask questions. I guess I think that's how I'm reading
So the
it.
facilities committee currently has already been created. Is that true, the long-term facilities committee?
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it's flexible.
But
We
you're
can
thinking
continue.
it's just gonna continue to grow. Now, would that
Yeah.
grow through your own appointments or through
So,
the board? How do you see the process?
That's a great question. That really takes us back to the heart of where we started the conversation of board committees have a lot of structure around them, including public meetings,
Right.
laws, and notification to the public of a meeting that, and all that. Administrative committees don't have that same. And this is one that kind of goes into both zones. So my default would be that, yeah, I'm probably gonna exercise some flexibility in expanding that and creating some more protocols around how this thing operates. But at the same time, I'm gonna be reporting back to the board to make sure we're staying on track. And so I guess that would be how I would manage it. I am gonna want to expand it. I don't think you're gonna be in a position in a public board meeting of saying, no, Paul, we don't want this member or this member or this member. That wouldn't feel good to anybody. But I think as we get going, it'll start to grow.
I think the only committee with a defined structure is the budget committee.
I believe so.
It's the only one, it's actually mandated by state law, and we follow the prescription
Yes.
prescribed through that law, right? So it's pretty structured in terms of what it does and its purpose.
But that facilities committee, because it is a board committee, to your point, will
Yes.
have to operate
Yep.
under public meeting law.
Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that won't change.
Right, and if members are officially added, it probably has to come through the board. That's my guess.
For approval.
Per our policy, it would have to.
Yeah.
And so here's a little interesting nuance. If you look at BCF, that's a committee, for example, where public engagement is really super important. And I underlined a particular one that gives me a little bit of heartburn. 1, 2, 3, the 5th paragraph, where it says, visitors shall sit apart from the committee members and shall speak only when invited to do so by the committee chair. That's not how I would typically run a long-range facilities committee. So that's why I say that particular one sort of operates in both worlds. But yeah, it's going to be open. People can come and people will go because it'll become that big eventually. But again, it's really incumbent upon me to be communicating with you all, like, here's where we are, here's who's generally showing up every time.
Right.
Here's the master list of everybody who's been involved or invited to any meeting, and there'll be 50 on this one and maybe 100 on this one. So it'll be really a matter of communications.
I think it's, from what I'm familiar with, having been at Corvallis, we were very careful to try to just use the word committee when it was more the official versus work group for more the, what's not prescribed by the public meeting law, which a work group could involve board members,
Sure.
in this case, up to
Right.
3.
Up to 3.
So I think that could be a good delineation as 2 different words potentially.
Good point, Steve.
So I'm trying to think of where this is going to go. I'm not sure if we want to sort of chew on this, if there's anything actionable out of this right now.
If you would like to, what I can do is call the policy folks at OSBA and say, okay, because I'm pretty sure these probably came right from
I
their
would
stuff,
guess.
and just say, here's what we're sort of wrestling with.
Right.
Is it important that that be explicit? What do you think? If we do want it to be explicit, how would you suggest we word it? And then I can come back next time and report on that.
I
if
think that
that's
sounds good.
suitable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this matter? Thanks, Janet.
Thanks for bringing that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good discussion. Thank you, guys.
Send me people.
Pardon?
Send me people.
Send you people? Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Want to be
Yeah.
Careful
involved.
what you wish for.
Right.
That's how I roll.
Okay, our next agenda items are in executive session, so unless there's any further discussion, I'm going to adjourn us. Anything else before we? Nope.
What's that?
Coral Heights.
Oh, they were phenomenal.
What did they say?
We opened up, that was the very first thing, is we opened up with the kids singing.
Oh,
It was just,
the best.
it was primo.
Yeah, the national anthem gave me chills.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, just to hear that was just, pure gold. I mean, that was, and then they sang a really nice song after that. That was,
Lonesome Road.
what's that?
Lonesome Road by James Taylor.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really set the tone for it, and so it was a nice. We celebrated, and then every new staff member came out and just introduced themselves, and then had a random question to kind of answer. So it was kind of fun, and then we did the pins, and then had a teacher from Scotts Mills who'd been in the district 35 years, all at Scotts Mills. And then a teacher of 40 years, all at Victor Point.
Wow.
So their principals came up and said a few words about them, and so yeah, I think, and I joked at the end, we started 15 minutes late and got done 15 minutes early, so hey,
There you go.
kind of snuck out a half hour out of somewhere. So I think it was well received by staff overall. I didn't hear anything negative. I think keeping it short and sweet and focused on the kids. The kids panel was, again,
It was the highlight for sure.
yeah, it was great, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good work.
Wonderful.
And real kudos to Derek McElfresh, the staff here. Paul and I just get to show up and talk. Those guys really make this stuff happen. And Derek was just running around crazy, just getting everybody backstage and setting our minds at ease that no, this is gonna go good. And so he found out that I can talk in front of people. So he's like, okay, I found an MC.
You're gonna get used again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, I thought it went really well as well, and there was a couple things that were done. We've always made a conscious effort of, both the charter schools are there, all their staff, and their new staff were also introduced, and what was the other piece? For 10-month classified employees, this isn't a contract day for them, so for the last 3 or 4 years, we've had them come and they sign in as they come in, and we time card 4 hours for them to be part of it, so that all the employees of the district, including the charter schools, are there at the same time. So
Good.
That's an important
In
point.
the update I sent you today, I think I sent it this morning, that was my Friday update, that got out Monday morning. I think there's a link in there to the remarks I gave, so you can see kind of how I addressed a couple of things that needed to be addressed, so I encourage you to read that. Good day.
Okay. With that, I'm going to adjourn us to executive session under ORS 1926602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations, as well as ORS 1926602H. Okay. So returning to regular open session, and we are going to adjourn unless there is any further business. Okay, meeting adjourned.